So to jumpstart our discussion, I'd like to share to you a very relevant story, no? Because research, as complicated as it could be, we might find it very difficult oftentimes, but research is actually rooted on human instinct. Our instinct to understand things, our instinct to make sense of our world. So please allow me to share a story first so that we can put this in the proper context. There was once a couple who just transferred to another house, and it was a new house for them, and of course they had new neighbors. And this his wife was actually looking at the neighbors. He was hanging clothes, in the neighboring house. Said, I think our neighbor doesn't know how to wash his clothes because as you can see, white as it may, but ang nakikita namin is hindi siya parang maputi, no? So, on the next day, finally the wife was happy. He was looking outside, saw that the clothes that were hanged were finally white. So, finally, our neighbor knows how to wash his clothes already. And I think I am actually wondering who could have taught him how to wash those white clothes properly. And of course, the husband said that just this morning, I was able to clean our windows finally. So this story tells us the importance of making our interpretation and analysis, even in the research context. Because the truth is, the clothes were really white, but the windows which were uncleaned were the reason why it looked very dirty. So that is how we actually interpret things. Sometimes our window panes are actually dirty. And that is why today we will be sharing to you how to properly interpret data interpretation and analysis, but we will focus on educational research. I am hoping that we are on the same boat. We will just focus on educational research because research, as we all know, is a very wide scope. If you talk about natural sciences, etc., we have it's a completely different field. But data interpretation and analysis in the educational research, it's in a different context. Remember, we are studying education. We are studying the educational process. And this is a fact. Human beings are the hardest creatures to understand. Whether you like it or not, they are very complicated. What is known to be the norm at the present might not be the norm. So let's talk about data interpretation and analysis. We can clean up our window panes as we go through, and hopefully we can have a clearer image of what the reality is. Because as I've said, everything is all about understanding. We may say that research is complicated, research is hard. Understanding something, making sense of every phenomena is a basic human instinct. If you know this, you will start loving research. Okay? So if you're working on your, just an input, if you're working on your master's, on your doctorate dissertation, I am hoping that you are doing something that you love. You may choose any topic because you're given the leeway to choose whatever social phenomena that you're studying as long as it's aligned with educational research. But the thing is, the question is always, do you wish to understand more about that certain social phenomena? Okay, so let's start with the very basic. The main question really is, what is data? Data is known to be information and not knowledge by itself. Okay, because we will later on see how data could be transformed into knowledge. So the sequence from data to knowledge is usually from data to information. That is the flow. We have a data that we wish to gather. We gather this one. We make sense of that data. That's why we have information. And once that information is proven again and again, then we create facts. As long as it's backed with evidence, as we can later on see, it becomes facts because we know for a fact that it really exists. And finally, from facts to knowledge. So what is the evolution of data to knowledge? So we see that data becomes information, of course, when it becomes relevant to your decision problem. So if you look at data is actually raw, diba? So we want to arrange it in a way that will be able to create better decisions. Okay? So in whatever field you are in, like for example, being a CESO, you have to make decisions, leading the organization, leading government. Information is everything. But data, when you analyze it, when you process it in such a way that makes a sense and becomes relevant for you to make decision, it becomes information. Okay? So our challenge usually when we gather information, especially in the data gathering stage, is how do we convert this data into information? Okay? And if you try to look at it, information becomes fact when data can support it. So you look at information again, and then you try to see if that information is proven again and again by evidence, by looking at what the previous research paper says, or by what the evidence proves, then you can say that that information becomes a fact. Because you know for sure that it is something that is always true, diba? So facts are what the data reveals. So, however, the decisive instrumental knowledge is expressed together with some statistical degree of confidence. So, usually, we have the empirical data to support it, and we usually use statistics to actually prove that that particular information is really a fact. Okay? So, as we can see here, there is a graph no being shown to us. So when you look at data, it becomes knowledge if the level of exactness of statistical model. So please understand, I will try to simplify. No, when you say statistical model, all statistics basically are a means for us to just make sense of the world. It is a simulation of the reality. Okay, because when you apply statistics, if you notice, it's a form of representation. It's a form of modeling. We are modeling reality. We try to use statistics to model that one. We get samples so that we don't have to go through the whole population in order for us to make sense of the information. And then we apply that to help our decision making. Okay? So if you are in the educational context, usually we try to drive our decision making based on the data that is available to us. Okay? But as we all know, we are dealing with learners. So this social phenomena of education is actually governed between the interaction of the learners and the teachers. And this is quite challenging because what might be applicable to the learners in a particular area or a particular field or particular location might not be applicable to this different set of learners. Okay? So iba-iba talaga. Bawat learners, there is a context, no? So if we wish data to be applicable, to be relevant, we have to apply it to our level of improvements on decision making. So usually, data becomes information, and then information becomes facts. And the higher they go, no, the more it becomes knowledge, it will aid us in decision making. But there's a certain phenomena in educational research. If you read all the papers, we can see that sometimes there are a lot of confusion as to what really is the direction. Okay, whether, for example, whether what will work, no? For example, yung cooperative learning, 'di ba? We see a different line of research proving that cooperative learning works. But there is also a line of researches that proves that sometimes the traditional approach might be the better path, no, for especially for Asians. Okay? So if we apply the cooperative learning approach, which is mandated here in the Philippines because we have lost, no, the Basic Education Act of I think 2013 tells us that we should apply inquiry-based learning and at the same time cooperative learning approaches. But the thing is, our classroom, our facilities does not support that. Okay, so that's why teachers might be leaning towards the traditional approach. Okay, so sometimes they say that the traditional approach might work. So there is a different field of line of researches that is actually disproving that. Okay, which is going towards a different direction. So how do you really decide? No, how should our policy be shaped? Either in basic education or in higher ed, wherein we train our teachers to become better teachers. Okay, so that is the evolution of information. Usually from data, we turn it into information, it becomes facts, and then it turns into knowledge. Okay, but I would like to present to you that in the social phenomena of educational research, it's quite complicated, no, as compared to the natural sciences. Because in natural sciences, it's quite stable. It's quite every knowledge there, every hard fact that was established is very much applicable in reality. For example, force is equal to mass times acceleration. We all know that that works, di ba? But in educational research, still, no, we do not know until now who can tell us in the chat box what is the best approach in teaching. Okay, what is the best strategy in learning? How do we ensure that our students in the higher ed will really finish their master's and doctorate degree? Up until now, there is no answer for that. But for force in the natural sciences, we all know that specific species were discovered. It's quite a stable area. But in the social phenomena of educational research, still until now, we don't have hard facts. Okay, so there is still a big dichotomy in terms of what is really what works and what will not work. Because in every set of students and learners, oftentimes there is a different approach. Okay, so that makes the social phenomena of educational research quite complicated. Okay, so I hope you put that into context, because most of our discussion here will be centered on that. Because if we don't put that into our minds, no, the way we interpret our information might be if we just focus on hard facts later on. When you do your interpretation, you might find it very frustrating. Okay, or you might not be able to really understand what is the social phenomena that you're trying to understand. Okay, so when you do analysis and interpretation provide answers to the research questions postulated in the study. So that's very simple. Okay, so when we do our analysis and interpretation, always anchor yourself, because I know some of you are writing, no, some of you are writing your paper. And I'm sure that you are almost in the finish line. But the idea here is that you always want to anchor yourself on the research question. So do not forget this. Okay, when you are writing your paper, when you're doing your analysis and discussion, usually what I did when I was finishing my master's and doctorate degree, I always post my research question, because you might get a far-fetched from the essence of what you are doing. So always look at your research questions. These are your guiding light. This is your beacon as to how you're going to write your paper. Okay? Because as they say, the results and discussion part is the most important part of your research paper. Okay? Why? Because usually in the rationale, in the introduction, what you usually do is just to justify why the research should be conducted. In the methodology, if you are doing quanti, of course, no, that is already given. Parang template na siya. No? You have to write it the way it should be written based on the tradition or the custom of your university or the journal that you want to try to publish. So there is a pattern, no, in the methodology. And of course, when you're done with your methodology, that's where you present, of course, your results. Now, the results are originally yours, di ba? So these are the things that are originally yours, and you really have to express yourself in this part. Okay? Because this is the most important part, and you do your analysis. But what is analysis? Analysis means ordering, manipulating, and summarizing of data to obtain answers to research questions. Okay, so again, that's the reason why you need to really post your research question there. Okay, the statement of the problem should be there, since that has been approved. No, when you do your dissertation or master's degree, of course, you have a design hearing. So your research questions are basically pre-approved. Okay, So they have been approved unless it is a qualitative research. Sometimes it is more of an objective type wherein it might be exploratory. So you have to explore. So in that case, the statement of the problem might be evolving. It may change depending on the line of inquiry. So it's quite different. But if it's quantitative, if you're doing quantitative research, usually it will be given to you. So always post it there when you read the paper and analyze. As you manipulate the information, the data, you have to be guided by your statement of the problem. Now, another thing that we have to take note, we have to order, manipulate, and summarize data. Okay? So, ordering, manipulating, and summarizing data is a skill. Okay? So, hopefully, ako personally, I would suggest that you learn really the ins and outs of doing it in Excel because there is more freedom. But, you can also use other tools like SPSS and Jamovie. Of course, they are very good in applying the different statistical tests, and techniques. Jamovie is for free. SPSS might be provided by your university. Okay, so always connect with your advisor and try to order and manipulate and summarize the information. Okay, sometimes when we are gathering information, we have to rearrange it in order to see it in different angles. Okay, that's sometimes that is the limitation of most researchers. They don't manipulate the information, they don't reorder it, they don't summarize it, they don't look at it in different angles. That's the reason why their interpretation is sometimes very shall I say it's shallow and it doesn't really make sense. Okay, so remember, you cannot analyze information which is garbage in the first place. Okay, so I would like to emphasize that do not analyze information which were unethically gathered, okay, and in the first place doesn't provide you with information. Honestly, it will make your life difficult. Okay, so if you're doing your dissertation now, if you're doing your thesis, always ensure that you collect information in the proper way. I'll give you an example. For instance, if you are usually in the educational research part, we usually limit ourselves with questions relating to the social phenomenon. For example, we wanted to evaluate the performance of the principal, for instance. Okay. Now, since you are gathering information on the performance of the principals in the field, of course, no, you don't allow the principal to gather the information themselves because that is very obtrusive, no? It will cause a lot of teachers to just rate the principal the highest grade because in the first place, they were gathering information for their benefit. Okay? So, my point here is that the obtrusiveness of our data gathering might affect the results that we will be analyzing. So you cannot really analyze information which is garbage in the first place. Okay. So as much as possible as a researcher, we need to ensure that our instrument is properly created. Especially, be careful with the Likert scale because there are many biases that could happen in your data gathering. For example, there are people who will just do the neutral bias or they will just rate the center of the Likert scale because they wanted to play safe. Or they will rate it high because the person gathering the information is the principal himself. Okay? Or the person that might be affected or has an authority as to the results. Okay? So you have to make it clear when you gather information that they can write information there and it will be purely confidential and that you will respect the privacy of the information gathered and it will be used only for that particular purpose. Of course, remember we have the Data Privacy Act. We only have to use information based on its purpose. Okay? So you have to be ethical on your data gathering and you have to be very sensitive as to how the data is gathered and would that information be correct. Now, if you are the researcher doing all these things, is a very important skill. Okay, sometimes we want the shortcut, no? We want to do things based on what is the fastest, no? And we just ask people to just fill up a Google form, as many as they can. But if you look at it, the data gathering procedure is very critical. Okay, trust me, if you don't follow this, you will find it difficult to analyze because garbage information or data will only not give you the proper insights, but it will be an erroneous information, and there's no sense analyzing it in the first place. Okay? So if you are done with that, I would just like to emphasize that because this is very common when we do Likert scale, no? Or we implement a survey tool based on the Likert scale because as we all know, no, as I mentioned, we are not in the natural sciences. We are in the educational field. Okay? And analyzing intentions, beliefs, attitude are very subjective things. Okay? A very good example is, attitude. Attitude, for instance. Attitude towards a particular program, educational program. That is very subjective. Diba? So when they answer the Likert scale based on that, your goal as a researcher is to ensure that the instrument, as much as possible, measures this attitude in the most objective way and that it will be able to gather information properly. Okay? So if you're done with this analysis part, of course, you can look at it in different angles. You can use pivot tables in Excel. If you're familiar with that, you can research that because we don't have time to really discuss everything. But you can also apply statistical tool. You can use standard deviation, measures of central tendency, etc., which I'll be presenting some of them. No, range, frequency distribution, all these things can be used. You look at the basic first because it doesn't require really very complicated statistical tools to understand things. Just to give you an overview of the information. So manipulating it, summarizing it is a very important skill. Now, once you're done with this, you proceed with the interpretation. Okay? So you rearrange it, you manipulated it, you ordered it properly in different angles, and finally, you are now in the interpretation part. The interpretation, of course, gives the results of the analysis. You make inferences pertinent to the research relations studied and draws conclusions about these relations. So what are inferences? This is a very important skill. For example, in an elevator, there was a person who was using the elevator, and he started from the ground floor up to the 7th floor. And in the 7th floor, when he went out, he saw that when he went out from the elevator, the people around saw that there was a snake who was lying beside that person, and he lost one fang. So what will be your inference? Okay, so siguro some of us will say na maybe the snake tried to bite the person, and it so happened that person has a steel, basig pungkol to ang pungkol ba or bakul ba, so wala siyang paa talaga, and what happened was the snake bit the part which is made of metal, no? So that is an inference. No, we cannot say that we saw it happen, but there are inferences, no, that we can make. No? For example, a crime scene. No? So there was a crime scene. There was a person who died, and in the crime scene, of course, if you are the investigator, you will look at the facts. No, you will look at the facts. So one of the facts is that that person has a golden necklace and a golden bracelet. He was killed at gunpoint. Of course, no, he was killed there, and all his money was intact. No, so what theories can you create? No, out from these facts. Of course, you can say that somehow this person, maybe this is a crime of passion because there was no robbery involved. He was not killed out of the desire to take his money because all his money, his pocket was there. Okay, but did I really know the person who killed it? Of course, I did not. I can only make inferences, okay, based on the facts that I can see in the crime scene. So interpretation is the result of analysis. You look at the facts because we don't really know each event that occurs in reality. We can only interpret, we can only make inferences pertinent to the research relations studied, and we can draw conclusions about these relations. Okay? But, looking at the social phenomena that we are studying as educational researchers, oftentimes this is very much difficult when you are dealing with human beings because making inferences can be subject to multiple rival interpretations, okay, which we will discuss later on, because it's not always that, for example, you see people in the picket line, in the field of law. Usually, people might do a picket. So what is a picket? It's where people would move back and forth and try to air out their grievances, diba, in the workplace. Okay. So just to express their freedom as to what are their grievances. But, asking them, why are you there? Why are you lining up in the picket? Maybe there are different reasons, diba? And being in the picket sometimes does not mean that that person has really legitimate grievances. It could be that he was there because his friend asked him to be there. Diba? You can also say that that person really has his personal grievances against the company, or there could be another reason behind. Or it could be a reflex, or let's say, for example, of all his workers were already there and his friends were already there, and he does not even know why he was there. So, human actions, since it's a social phenomena, sometimes is very hard to understand. So when you interpret that one, it could be subjected to multiple interpretation. So I'm just saying this because we are not studying the natural sciences. Okay? We are studying the complex interaction of education. Okay? Which occurs in the classroom, which occurs in a very complicated, it's quite complicated because there are no concrete answers up to now. Okay, how many years have been the educational field existed? No, research in the educational field has been existing for a long time, and up until now there is no concrete answers as to what is the best way and method to learn. It differs depending on the kind of teacher that you have and the kind of learners that you have. Okay? But of course, no, we are bound to a rules that are invisible to us. Okay? We call that usually the shared meaning of the interaction between teachers and learners. So for example, right now, I'm talking to you using language, using words. But of course, no, human as we are capable of understanding each other. Diba? So there is still a set of rules that governs us because we can communicate with each other. But I tell you, this interaction now, this discussion now, could still be subjected to multiple interpretations. Okay, I might be saying one concept, one idea, but the other party might interpret it in a different way, in a multiple possible ways. Okay, so that is how complicated human interaction could be. Okay, so imagine a teacher talking to his learners, talking to her learners, and you are studying the teaching learning process. And you are looking at a particular manifestation of the behavior. Okay? So, how do you do your interpretation as to how the learner acted? Okay? So, that will be subjected to your own lens of interpretation. Now, question now is, let's go back to our discussion a while ago. Are our window panes clean? No, because if our window panes are not clean, we might be interpreting it in a different context, in a different situation, and we are actually the instrument that interprets it. Okay, so that's why, as social researchers, as educational researchers, we would like to call ourselves that. No, you have to act as one and try to get rid of yourself from biases and your prejudices, because interpretation in that way would make it more suitable, more proper, and more objective. Okay? We cannot really do away much of that, but somehow we have to clean our window panes as much as possible so that our interpretation would be more objective as it could be. Okay, so what is the difference between data analysis and interpretation? Okay, so yung data collection is the systematic recording of information. So when you do your data collection, of course, you have to systematically record the information. You have to be very quick. You need to know what is important or not. Good. Because if you will just gather information as they come without even identifying if this information is relevant or not, I tell you, you will go through data overload. Okay? Especially if your research paper is qualitative, of course, that will really lead to data overload, and it will cause you a lot of stress, no? So the technique that I would like to share here is that when you do your data collection, of course, this might be, if your research paper is exploratory, do not forget to zoom in and zoom out. That is one of the techniques that we apply. Let's say, for example, you are gathering information, especially if it's a grounded theory, etc. You have to zoom in, zoom out. But even if it's quantitative, this skill is important. So how do you zoom in, zoom out? Of course, the technique that I shared to you is you look at your research problem always. Usually, there is a general statement of the problem. There could be specific statement of the problems given to you by the panel. And you have to analyze this properly. If it's qualitative, of course, you will have an objective type. Sometimes they will give you an objective type depending on the norm of your university. Iba-iba kasi tayo, di ba? Iba-ibang mga norm. But you listen to your advisor, you listen to your panel, and try to be guided by them. Okay, so you look at the information, the problem that was given to you, and try to see if you are answering this question. Okay, and try to identify which among these data or information is most relevant to that particular research problem. Okay, then you proceed to data analysis, which involves working to uncover patterns and trends in data sets. So how do we do this again? We try to manipulate, we try to rearrange information, we try to change angles, no? So that we will be able to make sense of the information gathered. So data interpretation involves explaining those patterns and trends. So what is the reason why you have to manipulate it? Of course, you try to spot patterns and trends. Okay? So the usually I noticed, no, when I was doing my masters, it took me 6 years to really finish my masters, my doctorate degree for 3 years, and the usual pattern is that when you look at data, you might get overwhelmed, no? You don't see the pattern anymore because you're too engrossed with the information. So that's why it's very important that you work on something that you love. Okay? You try to look for ways to choose a topic talaga that will make you carry it up to the end. Okay? Because, as a professor in research and as a practitioner in the educational field, I have received a lot of questions. Tatanong talaga sila, Sir attorney, anong magandang topic na gagawin ko sa masters ko or sa doctoral degree ko? Okay, I think that question sometimes doesn't make sense, no? You have to ask yourself that question because what might be very interesting for me might not be interesting for you. Okay? You have to choose a topic talaga that you find very meaningful personally so that you can have that passion to manipulate the information and to seek the answers to your question. Okay? So, for those, I think, di ba, Sir Ernel, ang ating participants ngayon are those who are pursuing their master's and their doctorate degree. So,
Yes, sir.
yeah. So, thank you, Sir Ernel. So, if you are doing that, please choose a topic that you love. Yun lang talaga. Kasi it's not easy to do data collection and data analysis. Okay? Because if it's something na ako ang nagbigay, I will be happy, giving you the topic. But the thing is, you will be the one doing it up to the end. So I am also a research advisor. I always tell them, do you really, is there an interest in your part in this topic that you have chosen? You have to revisit that. And for those who are here pursuing your dissertation, of course, no, start na talaga kayo looking at fields that you are interested in. Okay? So yun yung pinaka-important. You have to manipulate. And of course, the very important skill that we have to learn in data analysis, if you are if you find yourself in a writer's block, ang technique talaga natin is we look at and read papers of similar topics. Okay? Tingnan nyo yung mga papers, i-research nyo yun sa Google Scholar or anong platform na meron kayo, and look at the research papers. Read the results and discussion part. Please do not read the whole paper because maubos ang oras nyo. Human as we are, we don't have the luxury of time. Okay, I'll tell you that. When I finished my doctorate, of course, a few years after, I pursued law. And sa field ng law, parang napakaraming cases. Cases that you have to read since first year. Pero the professors will always tell you, basahin mo lahat from start to finish. But now, I realize na hindi, it's a trap. It's a prank. Hindi talaga kailangan basahin mo from start to finish. Okay? In reality, you have to learn the skill of skimming. Okay? Because you don't have the luxury of time to actually do everything. So, if you're going to read the paper talaga and you will be a perfectionist, it's a trap. The perfectionist trap. They call that the perfectionist trap. You might be tempted to read it from start to finish, not knowing that yung readings natin is parang data collection din. As I mentioned a while ago, you have to know what is important or not. Okay? So, you look at the papers that are relevant. You only read the results and discussion part because whether you like it or not, in the results and discussion part, they will try to cite the results and then they will try to interpret it. Okay? So, and then try to compare it with existing literature. Meron pang mga citation dun. Diba? So, yung citation niya, you can read it through at the last part. Meron parang citation. There's another paper that says this. Okay? So, you can cite that one. And actually, if you have time, it will be a snowball effect wherein you will look at that paper. So, meron siyang paper na na-cite. And of course, you can read that original paper. And I tell you, if you find it hard to trace the original paper because you have to pay something, there are many ways. Meron ng AI ngayon, merong mga website that will provide you with a paper. Okay, although I cannot really explain here how to do it, but of course, there are means available to you. Okay, hanapan mo ng paraan because that is how you stand at the shoulder of the giants. They call it standing at the shoulder of the giants. Kailangan natin, in order for us to become a researcher, you have to act like one. Okay? You have to understand what is the trend in the field that you are existing. Okay? So, yung data analysis, data collection part is not an easy part. It will be an iterative process. I tell you, if you're finishing your dissertation, you have to revisit your proposal. Sometimes you have to gather more information than usual rather than those you have proposed because it's iterative. Iterative means hindi siya isang flow lang na you have data collection, data analysis, and then you interpret. Oftentimes, you go back to data collection again. Diba? Para siyang something that will help you understand. So, sometimes data collection might be looking at the literature again. Okay? So, that's what is happening when you become a researcher. Okay? But, right now, technique lang, you assume that you are really a researcher so that you will act like one. Okay? So, oftentimes, that is the problem with some aspiring researchers. They tend to think of themselves as someone who is still aspiring to become one. Okay? So oftentimes, in order to become one, you have to pretend that you're already a researcher talaga. And you have to act like one. So, share ko lang sa inyo ha, walang researcher na tamad magbasa. So, same with, if you want to become a lawyer, it's impossible for you to become a lawyer if you are afraid of reading cases. If you are tamad ka magbasa, tamad ka magsulat, because if you think that if you become a lawyer, if you pass the bar and you will stop writing and stop reading, I think you are in the wrong place. Kasi when you become a lawyer, mas marami ka pang babasahin, mas marami ka pang susulatin. So, the same with our aspiring researchers here. Do not say that you are aspiring. Change that identity. Right now, you are already a researcher because you have a certain phenomena that you are interested in, and you will do everything in order to understand and uncover the reality of this certain phenomena. So choose one, okay? In my dissertation, I chose the social phenomena of optimizing performance management. Okay, so I created a theory in it, and creating a theory is not easy, diba? You have to understand the ins and outs, and that is the reason it really helped me to pass the Career Executive Service eligibility examination. There were 4 examinations, and I was able to hit 2 birds, well, I think 3 birds at the same time, because I was finishing my dissertation, and performance management is something that is very relevant to my dissertation, and it helped me pass the examinations. So you have to be strategic also, no, in the field that you are choosing. Okay, for example, you are in the field of you have to specialize. Okay, since I am already in the management, I was a principal during the time, so I decided I will focus on management, performance management in the educational field. So try to choose a field wherein you will be reading a lot about it. Okay, and here comes my input a while ago. You have to choose a field that you love. Okay, because it will take you time, no, hours of reading. And if you don't love that field, you will not last long. Okay? Because love is the fuel that will drive you to go and to reach the finish line. Okay? So hopefully that is something, no, that you can apply, no, and help you finish your dissertation. All right. So the purpose, no. So we try to revisit our purpose. So again, you look at the purpose of your data analysis to answer the research questions and to help determine the trends and relationships among the variables. Okay, so I hope that's very clear. I think I've explained that to everyone. Okay, so what are the steps in data analysis? So first, before data collection, you should accomplish the following. So, of course, you have to determine the method of data analysis. There are many ways to analyze information. We have thematic analysis for qualitative research. We have, of course, inferential analysis, etc. We can use a statistical tools. There's a p-value. There are measures of central tendency, and of course, we can determine. You try to determine how to process the data. So the information that you'll be gathering, you have to ask your question, what will be, if this is my data analysis part, anong data ang kailangan ko? So, you can project what will be the information that you'll be gathering from your respondents. And do not forget to consult a statistician. Okay? But, of course, no, when we train like Sir Ernel is part of my class, no? So, I was his professor before. So, our goal is to help you save a little by being the statistician yourself. Okay? So, that will help you save a lot. But, of course, it's good to have your own statistician so that you can you can get his advice as to how to collect that information. And do not forget to prepare your dummy tables. So what are dummy tables? These are tables that you'll be utilizing in presenting your information. You have to include it in as much as possible, you have to include that in your design hearing. So if you will have your dummy tables, of course, the panel will say that you have really studied how you're going to collect the information and how you're going to process that information. But sharing to you, there are parametric tests and non-parametric tests that will apply based on the assumptions of any statistical model. So do not forget to do this. In your data analysis, if you want to implement a particular statistical analysis, you have to look at the assumptions. For example, ANOVA, multiple linear regression, logistic regression, MANOVA, etc. has their own set of assumptions. Okay, so what I would want to tell my students really is do not forget to look at the assumptions. Okay, so in every assumption, there are specific tests in the statistical tool that will allow you to determine whether the assumptions are met or not. Okay, and you have to discuss that in your dissertation design hearing as much as possible. Okay, these are the things that you usually skip. Sometimes the panel will just allow you to present that you will utilize this statistical tool. But if you will be utilizing a particular statistical tool, it's very important for you to also know what are the assumptions on that particular statistical tool. That's why in our class, we always discuss the assumptions. Okay? So there are many assumptions. For example, multiple linear regression, you have to ensure that the variables are not related to each other, di ba? Because there are multiple independent variables and one dependent variable. So you have to ensure that the assumptions are met. Now, what if the assumptions are not met? Of course, you have the non-parametric equivalent. Okay? So it could be your fallback plan. Okay? So try to research if the parametric test will not work, what will be my fallback plan? I can utilize a non-parametric test. Okay? So, a researcher, you should not seek for significant results specifically. Okay? So, if the results yield non-significant results, you have to discuss that. You have to analyze why is this happening. You cannot change the statistical tool based on that. But if it's on assumptions, then you have to, if the assumptions are not met for that particular statistical tool, then you have to utilize the non-parametric equivalent. Okay? So I hope you do your research on that. What are your options? What are your fallback plans? And then how are you going to what data or information are you going to gather in order for you to know exactly how to manipulate this information. But again, do not change your tool because you are seeking for significant results. Okay? A researcher should be impartial as to the results. Okay? Because our goal here is, again, let me emphasize this. Our goal is to understand the phenomena, not to prove anything. Okay? These are two different stands. You are not a researcher if you are there to prove something. Okay? We are not here to advance our own argument on things. You are not a lawyer, you are a researcher. Okay? So you are wearing a hat of the researcher. You are there to uncover the truth. You are there to understand better the social phenomena of your interests. Okay? You are not there to prove that the results are significant or a particular strategy works or not. Okay? So you have to wear that hat. Okay? Let's proceed to the next. After data collection, of course, you have to process the data and prepare the tables and graphs, analyze and interpret findings. Okay, so of course, you have to process the data, prepare the tables and graphs, and you try to analyze. Remember, analysis means rearranging, manipulating the information, and you tell yourself, what do these things mean? Of course, you do your interpretation. And then consult again the statistician. Try to ask if all your interpretation are statistically sound. Of course, no, statistics has its own parlance. Okay, so usually you say there's no significant difference, diba? So we have our own parlance in statistics, and you have to use the proper parlance, the way we should present the results. There is also the American Psychological Association type, especially if you're doing with educational research. So make sure that you follow all those things. And then, very important, number 4, prepare for editing. So when you are writing, one technique I would like to share is that when you are writing, please do not correct yourself as you go on as you go on with the writing process. Just allow yourself to write it in any language that you want. Sometimes I even write in Cebuano if I encounter the writer's block. So just allow yourself to make it a free flow process. The writing process is creative. You cannot be a critic to yourself at the same time when you are writing, because writing is a creative process. I would suggest that you set aside a day wherein you will be editing everything you have written. Okay? So you can set aside a time for editing. Okay? But when you are writing, make sure that you don't act like an editor at the same time, because these are two conflicting personalities. Okay? So that's the reason why a lot of researchers will find it very difficult to finish their paper, because they become a writer and an editor all at the same time. You cannot wear the same hat at the same time. So I think that's the reason why I finished my dissertation on time, because I was able to apply this technique. So when you will be writing, this is a secret, this is our secret. When you are writing your paper or writing anything, do not try to be a critic. Okay? Just go writing your paper. Okay? Never mind the wrong spelling, never mind the wrong grammar. Just continue writing. Okay? And then set another time to edit all those wrong spelling, the grammatical error, the times where you use the Visayan language or the Filipino language because you find no words to write. Okay? And then set aside a time for that editing. That will, trust me, that will make the process faster. Okay? But please, no, this is a secret I would like to share with you. Please don't forget me if you finish your dissertation. Just a thank you will do. Okay? So, next is prepare for presentation. Of course, do not forget that any interpretation should be subjected, to fire. You have to present it to a panel wherein they will be critiquing your work. So, do not forget that when you are presenting, of course, you have to look at your audience, what is their background, and you have to explain it to them in a way that will make them understand the results. Okay? Because, whether you like it or not, your panel members are experts, but they belong to different fields. Okay? They specialize on many other things, not necessarily with the field that you're studying. So you have to be sensitive to this, because oftentimes you might find yourself arguing with the panel members, and sometimes it is rooted with your inability to present it in a proper way. So try to present it in, sometimes we might bank on presenting it in a very complicated way so that they will not understand, but I tell you, this will backfire. So you have to present it in a way that will help them understand, and you have to consider the realities that these are experts but they belong to different fields. So you have to present it in a way that is relevant to them. Okay? And pakita talaga natin that we understand, no? That we are the expert in this particular field. Kasi yun yung purpose ng being a researcher. It's understanding a phenomena, uncovering it for a long time, and then sharing our knowledge as to this particular field. So, yan talaga sinasabi ko sa mga advisee ko. You are the one who is reading all about that for a very long time. It took you 6 years to finish it, 5 years, 3 years. I know you've been reading about it. So, you have to present it in such a way that will capture their attention, and then you have to have a deeper understanding of the phenomena that you are trying to explore. Okay? So, balik naman tayo sa you should be passionate about it. Kasi, if you are not passionate about it, it will show on the way you present your results. Okay? So, tayo ang expert in the field that we are presenting. Kaya, we have to show this in the way that we present. Alright? Of course, no, may iba't ibang klaseng data analysis. So, first is the descriptive analysis. Okay, ano yung descriptive analysis? It refers to the description of the data from a particular sample. Okay? Hence, the conclusion must refer only to the sample. Okay? In other words, these summarize the data and describe sample characteristics. Okay? So, descriptive statistics are numerical values obtained from the sample that gives meaning to the data collected. So, merong very basic yung frequency distribution, a systematic arrangement of numeric values from lowest to highest or highest to lowest. So, yung frequency distribution, makikita natin kung ano yung distribution niya, whether it's a normal curve or not. This is very important because, for example, our weight as human beings is normally distributed. No, in the center, siguro by average, yung boys around 70 kilograms to 80 kilograms. But if you will look at mga 100 kilograms na, di ba, they will oftentimes, lesser in frequency. Yung mga 10 kilograms, may tao bang 10 kilograms? Siguro mga 20 to 30 kilograms. Maliit din yung frequency. So, as you can see in the normal chord sa left na side, usually, maliit lang, no? They are fewer in numbers. Okay? So, that's why you have, if you look at the frequency graph, it is higher at the center, higher kasi marami dito, and only a few for the extremes, no? So, maraming information that are normally distributed, like our height, like our weight, like our scores. Kung properly done yung examination, usually normal distribution ang results. Kasi most of them will have the average. Pero kung masyadong very easy yung exam, of course, you will have skewed, no? It will be skewed to the higher part, no? Kasi marami sa kanila ang nakakuha ng mataas na score. But if it's properly done, so it will be a normal distribution. So why is this important? Most of the parametric statistical tools, statistical tests, are rooted on the assumption that the data is normally distributed. So kaya dapat we need to look at the frequency distribution. Okay? So ano yung measures of central tendency? If there's one number that can represent the whole entirety of the information, yun yung measures of central tendency. Yun yung average. I think alam naman natin to, di ba? Yung mode, median, and mean. Okay? So ito yung mga iba't ibang paraan upang ma-measure natin yung measures of central tendency. But the idea here is still modeling, di ba? So we have a range of scores. Of course, in one classroom, siguro meron tayong 30 to 60 students in range. So, tanong, what was the average score of all the learners? Of course, you have to do measures of central tendency. So, average. Yung average natin is like a model. Isang numero that will represent the entirety of the scores of the learners. So, yun yung essence ng measures of central tendency. So, if you are going to create a graph, of course, no, yung frequency distribution natin, nasa center yung average. Okay? And it provides you with information. Okay, if there's one number na gusto kong i-represent ang entirety ng information na binigay sa akin, I can use the measures of central tendency, either mean, median, and mode. And these are different measures of central tendency applicable to different situations. Okay? So, dapat alam natin ano yung purpose ng measures of central tendency. Okay, this is very basic. And of course, yung measures of central variability. Ano ba yun? Of course, no, data might vary. Kasi in your classroom, di ba, iba't iba yung scores nila. So, statistics are concerned with the degree to which the scores in a distribution are different from or similar to each other. So, tanong, how does it deviate with the mean? Di ba, ang mean natin is yung model natin for the whole data. Pero merong mga information that is away from the mean, merong mga deviation from the mean, pero ano yung average ng variability? Okay? Why is this important? Sample. yung heart rate natin. Merong tinatawag na heart rate variability. Okay, I recently purchased a smartwatch. Nakikita doon ano yung mga heart rate variability ng rate ng beat ng heart natin. Okay, so why is this important? Why are they measuring it? Okay, oftentimes if your heart rate differs greatly in in the whole duration of a day, that oftentimes is a symptom of heart problems. Okay? So dapat yung heart variability natin hindi masyadong mataas. Okay? Unless of course you will do your exercise. Okay? So when you do your exercise, of course tumataas yung heart rate natin from aerobic to anaerobic to extreme. Okay? So they are actually measuring that. Yung mga smartwatch ngayon are capable of doing that. And they can even send you an alert if your heart rate is very fast already, because that could be signs that you are about to have God forbid a heart attack, or for instance. So itong heart rate variability, if you are resting, it should be low as much as possible. Okay? So these are measures that are important, especially in health, etc. So yung scores natin, nandun tayo sa classroom, yung heart rate, wala nang namang heart rate, yung score variability, what does it tell us? Kung scores nila deviates mainly to the mean, pinapakita nito how much the scores actually deviate from the measure of central tendency. Okay, so if we are to illustrate it, kapag wide yung normal curve, mas mataas yung variability, of course. Then kapag maliit lang yung variability, of course, you will have a normal curve na parang ganito lang. Okay, so it will be narrower kasi yung range ng scores ay maliit lang. So most of the scores are clustered in the mean. Okay, so going back to the heart rate, yung variability naman, hindi naman talaga to the extreme, meron yung mga interpretation. Okay, but the idea here is kapag resting ka, dapat yung heart rate natin as low as possible. Okay, sige, so that's an example of why variability means much. So next is range, the distance between the highest score and the lowest score in the distribution. That's another measure of variability. Okay, so the range of learning center, ano yung mga, but you have to be aware that there are sometimes outliers, so these outliers might distort your information. Okay, so what do you do with outliers? Usually we remove them. Okay, so you remove the outliers. There is a way for you to, because it will really distort your information. Okay, so there's a way for us to eliminate outliers. You have to do data cleaning. So yun, that's very important. So, consult na lang yung statistician nyo and try to look at ways in order for you to ensure that the range is proper and it is representative of the normal distribution of the information you have gathered. Next is standard deviation. So, the most commonly used is really yung standard deviation. Bakit? Kasi it is the average to which the scores deviate from the mean, which is a very good measure of the variability of the information. Okay? So, yan. Standard deviation. So, what are the classification of descriptive analysis? Of course, we have bivariate descriptive statistics. Ano ibig sabihin? Derived from simultaneous analysis ng dalawang variables in order to examine the relationship between the variables. But oftentimes, ito yung bivariate descriptive statistics, parang dalawa lang yung variables and we have to analyze. But right now, this is actually gaining less and less popularity because in reality, there are multiple variables involved, diba? Okay, so I personally, I would discourage you from really using just bivariate descriptive statistics. Okay, but it's still a tool that you can use. For example, you can use correlation. The most common ni siya. You can use Pearson R, describing the relationship between two measures. Or you can use contingency tables Ano yung contingency tables? Essentially, parang two-dimensional frequency distribution lang in which the frequencies of two variables are cross-tabulated and you can compare. Okay? Tawag doon is contingency tables. Okay, so punta naman tayo sa inferential analysis. If yung descriptive analysis, surface level lang, tinitingnan natin how the data is distributed, ano yung variability, ano yung measures of central tendency. Of course, no, in descriptive analysis, I would suggest that you check the assumptions of your statistical tool. So parang preload po siya for you to do your inferential analysis. In the inferential analysis naman, we use already statistical tests, either to test for a significant relationship among the variables, so, meron bang relationship talaga na nag-i-exist, or to find statistical support for the hypothesis. Okay, so yun yung mga relationship dito. It's either this relationship could exist na kapag tumataas yung isa, of course, the other variable usually rises up. Okay, showing the possibility of causality. Okay, but here, take note, the term is possibility. Okay? It's not really a measure of causality when it comes to relationship. Relationship is not equivalent to cause. Okay? So, for example, if you are a math, if you're good at math, usually it's correlated. They would correlate it to males. So, just being a male means you are good at math. But they will also say that if you're good in English, females are usually better in English. So there could be a correlation. Okay, but the thing is, it's not just because you are male that you are good in math. Okay, just because you're a female, it doesn't mean that you will be good in English. Okay, so it's not equivalent to causality, but there is a relationship or trend that exists which you can test. At ito yung magagamit natin in terms of relationship. Okay, so ano yung inferential statistics? Ito yung numerical values that enable the researcher to draw conclusion about a population based on the characteristics of a population sample. So anong nangyayari dito? Example, dito sa Cebu, we have the CCLX. Ito yung the longest bridge in the Philippines. So, I think you also have a bridge there in Leyte. Where is this located? So, of course, you're looking at the bridge, it's very huge, and you wanted to study it. So, the bridge itself, can you place it inside your laboratory? Of course, you cannot place it inside your laboratory. So, if you wish to study the bridge, the whole long bridge, you can create a miniature of that particular bridge and set it up as closest to the original as possible. Okay? So, that is what is happening in inferential statistics. Instead of studying the whole population, then you just do sampling. You try to create samples out from the groups that you have identified, and then try to create your inferences and conclusion based on the sample you have collected. And based on that, you'll be able to unveil the characteristic of the whole population. Okay? So, what do we use in inferential statistics? We use the laws of probability. Okay? So, we look at the laws of probability and we can describe the whole population based on the sample that we have gathered. Ito yung beauty ng inferential statistics. Hindi na po kailangan nating tanungin lahat ng whole population. For example, for political elections, there might be surveys that are conducted. So instead of asking each person, the surveys will just get a sample and try to look at the post. But the sampling has a technique. You have to do it randomly, because if you will do it based on not on the laws of sampling, you might not be able to get the proper information or the proper sample. You have to properly collect the sample. Okay? Again, based on probability po ito. Okay? So, the art of data interpretation. Punta naman tayo sa art of data interpretation. I have shared a few insights regarding this a while ago. So, this is a little bit, because interpretation, whether you like it or not, is subjected to the lens of the human senses. Okay? So, tingnan natin, when you look at how do we interpret information, of course, no, we are leaning towards the natural sciences, the scientific method. Okay? So, ano ba yung scientific method? Of course, we have the empiricist view. So, ano yung empiricist view? Yung empiricist view would advance that we make sense of reality based on how we interpret or how our senses gathers information all around us. Okay? This is a little bit deep, no? Because, of course, no, when you do research, whether you like it or not, you have to make sense of things. Okay? And sensing things requires us to use our senses. Okay? Like right now, you're listening to me. These are sound waves that is propagated, and you can hear my the sound of my voice. You use your ears to make sense of this information. Okay? And then, of course, I will try to use sounds in order to communicate with you, and you interpret these words based on how your senses work. Okay? So that's how we make sense of the world. But there are many ways to sense the world. The empiricist view is that we are all interpreting things based on our senses. Okay? So how do we interpret things? That's a very important question. How do we make sense of the reality that we are in? So lahat ng meanings, all meanings we know depend on the key of interpretation. That's what George Eliot said. Diba? So, what is the key of interpretation? In the story that we have shared at the start, of course, no, it goes to what is your key of information. Of course, the person was looking at how the person was washing his white clothes. What is the key there? Okay? So, of course, the person has his own biases. Because the instrument itself is the human being when it comes to the interpretation. Okay? So, if you will ask me what is the key, I think our perception of things, and that perception of things is, together with it includes our biases, our experiences, diba? So some of you, as I mentioned, will react on certain things more than others. Okay? Or you might be who is drinking his coffee now because he's a little bit drowsy. So when you present your coffee here, it might be others will view it as half full, others will view it as half empty. Okay? Others might be teachers that are joining us, diba? Others might see their life as, they might not be very happy with their lives, but others of the same situation might feel very happy with their life. So the point is, the key to interpretation is ourselves. We are the instrument. No, in any interpretation that we do, human beings are the keys. Okay? And not only that, it also goes through a process. Other external things are there, like the window pane, for instance, which can affect our interpretation. Okay? Or the deadline for your dissertation or thesis you have, it might be affecting your interpretation because you are in a hurry kasi graduation na, and you are still in the analysis and discussion part, and yung compliance na nakalagay sa panel, sinabi nila you have to do your interpretation. You have to redo your interpretation. And you have to do it as fast as possible. Okay? So that is affecting now your interpretation. Okay? So interpretation refers to the task of drawing inferences from collecting facts after an analytical or experimental study. Okay? So interpretation, drawing inferences na. Things that you don't see. Things that are based on facts, and you have to make it as intelligently as possible. In fact, it is a search for broader meaning of research findings. Okay? So, as I mentioned a while ago, I think I have discussed this very thoroughly. You cannot, if you find that you cannot interpret anything from the results, of course, no, the technique is read the results and discussion of studies similar to you and try to make sense of the information that you have gathered. Okay, so the task of interpretation has two major aspects. So first, you have to exert effort to establish a continuity in research through linking the results of the given study with those of another. So what is this? Again, this is standing in the shoulder of giants. The giants that I refer are the previous researchers that also studied the same thing. This is a common problem. They do their results and discussion, but they don't even refer to the previous research findings. So how do you fit yourself in the literature gap or the theoretical gap, as it may be, whatever is the context of your research? Diba? In the literature review, you have your literature gaps presented. In the rationale, you try to establish why the study has to be done because it is an important thing. It solves a particular problem. It solves a particular phenomena. But the thing is, that should be showcased on your results and discussion. So you can only link it if you cite the existing research paper. Okay? The existing research paper, what is what are the issues being talked about in that particular field? Okay? So you have to establish that link. And next is the establishment of some explanation concepts. Okay? So this is very common. Sometimes, like for example, very common, sometimes when you present your results, these are concepts already that are logically, by all means, these are concepts that are already existing. Okay, like saying to us that there are internal and external aspects in the human behavior is already a common knowledge, diba? It's like telling us that the sun will rise in the morning and it will set in the afternoon. Okay, so these are things that are common knowledge already. But what does the data tell us? Okay, very common is that they will just tell us that, let's say for example, if you abuse the child, of course it will cause, if there's abuses, of course it will cause emotional damage. I think that's logical. But if you look at patterns that are different, like for example, it will be something different, okay? That is where results or explanation concepts comes in, okay? Very common is presenting information commonly available to us already and is already a general, it's already generally known, okay? So you have to really revisit your interpretation and try to see if it makes sense, no? Because telling us something that is already factual and is a general knowledge will not advance the field that you are studying. Okay? So again, there are two sets of things that you have to do in your interpretation. First is you have to establish continuity in research, meaning you have to present that you have read what is written in the current research papers that are surrounding your field, then linking the results of the given study with those of another, and of course, establishment of some explanation concepts. Okay, so why interpretation? Interpretation is essential for the simple reason that the usefulness and the utility of research findings lie in proper interpretation. Okay, so when we interpret things, and then we don't remember, it is something that should shape policy to help us with our actions, decision making. Then if data is not transformed into information, into fact, and into knowledge, of course, no, you cannot apply it to decision making. So interpretation is essential, okay? And it is something that will make it very useful, and it will, of course, it will guide policy. But what if the data was erroneously gathered, etc.? So it will affect the decision-making process. So it is being considered a basic component of research process because of the following reasons. First, okay, interpretation leads to establishment. First, leads to the establishment of explanatory concepts that can serve as a guide for future research studies. Are there patterns that you have seen? Okay, like for example, the modular approach, distance learning during the COVID-19. A lot of researchers were studying that. Okay, what was the problem? Okay, how can you explain why it failed? No, why was there a huge learning gap during that time? Okay, you can say it's integrity of the assessment process. You can say, for example, the modular approach is not appropriate for learners who are not. There is a level of autonomy, perhaps, that is required in order for the learner to learn from the modular approach. Because I tell you, the modular modality requires a learner who can read on his own, diba? Let alone, no, we are pursuing our dissertation, masteral thesis, etc. But can you read a paper as thick as your thumb? Diba? Of course, no, that will cause us to be drowsy or diba, inaantok pa tayo. How much more our learners who has to finish modules as thick as our thumb in just one day, diba? So it requires a level of autonomy on the part of the learners. Okay, who will be the para teachers in their respective homes, no? Who will guide them in terms of finishing the modules? So these are factors that should be considered. So another is it opens new avenues of intellectual adventure and stimulates the quest for more knowledge. Okay? So our interpretation is something that will guide, no, other researchers to pursue. That's why I tell you, I've shared to you that you can read the results and discussion part. Okay? I think that's the meat of every research paper. Okay, you can read the results and discussion part immediately because there you can infer what is the problem and you can also infer what the study is all about. Okay? A researcher can better appreciate only through interpretation why his findings are what they are and can make others to understand the real significance of his research findings. And of course, no, your results and discussion, your analysis, your interpretation will answer your research problem. Okay, and hopefully your research problem is something that really requires research to be conducted in order to be answered. No, not just a mere research in Google. Okay? So methods of interpretation. Of course, you have direct visual observations of raw data. Okay? So, for example, human behavior, we can use observation method in trying to make sense of information. After organizing the data in tables, of course, that's one way. You can organize them in tables. You can make graphical representations. Okay, there are many techniques on graphical representations. You can do calculations using numerical and statistical methods. Okay, and you can also do mathematical modeling. Those are the methods of interpretation. So, precautions. One should always remember that even if data are properly collected, kahit collected na properly, and analyzed, so given you have really do with the rigors of your instrument, wrong interpretation would lead to inaccurate conclusions. Okay? So, therefore, absolutely essential that the task of interpretation be accomplished with patience, in an impartial manner, and also in a correct perspective. Okay? Again, this goes back to our story in the first place. We have to clean our window panes. Okay? And then we have to get rid of our own prejudices. Okay? We should not advocate for any method if we're studying teaching strategy na we would want it to work, etc. You should be impartial. You should exercise intellectual honesty on your results. Okay? Because whatever are the results should be something that should advance the field that you have chosen. Okay? You are there to understand, not to defend a certain party. Okay? So you have to, if you are a lawyer, you have to remove your hat of a lawyer. You are not there advancing for a cause or a particular strategy. So, the researcher must pay attention to the following points of correct interpretation. At the outset, the researcher must invariably satisfy himself that the data are appropriate, trustworthy, adequate for drawing references. Yun talaga yung una, di ba? I've already discussed this. You have to have correct information gathered truthfully, ethically, and trustworthy talaga siya. Because it's useless to analyze garbage information. The data reflect good homogeneity and that the proper analysis has been done through statistical methods. Okay? Then the researcher must remain cautious about the errors that can possibly arise in the process of interpreting results. Okay? So we can make inferences, but we have to be very careful as to what inferences we make. Okay? So allow me to share this paper by David Erickson and Elliott Jr. These are professors in University of California, Los Angeles. Okay, so according to them, educational research had so few real implications for educational policy. Okay, looking at our current field right now, you can see that despite high government funding, this is in US, but this can certainly apply to us. In the Department of Education, we are spending high amounts of grants for research paper. Okay? And for well over 100 years of independent existence, the social sciences have made little progress in uncovering the structure of social reality and the human mind when it comes to education. Tell me here, what is the best instructional approach? Up until now, we don't have the answers. Okay? So, the authors would like to attribute it to multiple factors. Okay? So, why is it that it's very hard to have hard facts in the educational field, in the field of education? Okay? So, I would like to assume that we are here for educational research. Okay? We would want to know more about classroom discipline. We would want to know more about how the teaching learning process works. How policies should be shaped. Okay? Right now, DepEd has implemented a 3-term, instead of doing the 4 grading period, we are implementing the 3-term approach. They don't want to call it trimester. It's a 3-term approach in our in implementing our policies, implementing the curriculum itself. Okay? Why is that? What is the research behind it? So, but up until now, usually, it has been, there are no concrete answers as to what is the most effective instructional method. Okay? Because if you look at this, in Finland, the education system ranks among the best globally. But I tell you, in contrast, with completely different policy, South Korea is also one of the leaders in education globally. Okay? In Finland, they have a less stringent approach. Okay? Usually, students would play around, and then the only technique that they did was to give teachers the highest pay, and then their class, they really invested in education, but they don't pressure much their learners. In South Korea, they are also the best in terms of education, but they also have high suicide rates among their learners because most of the learners would end their classes at 12 midnight, as they say. So it has a more stringent approach, but their target was really to have a social norm in their society that parents has the ultimate responsibility, the social responsibility to send their learners, to send their children to school, and to ensure that their child is given the best education as much as possible. Okay? Not to mention Japan also is one of the leading. Okay? So Finland uses cooperative learning as much. More play, less time. They meet a few days in a week. Well, in South Korea, they have more time, more contact time, more strategies on the social aspect. Okay, but they have a different approach, but they have the best education. So which one is best? That's the question. Okay, there are many conflicting results, in terms of what particular method works. Okay? So, according to the authors, the usual practice of importing empirical methodologies, for example, the scientific method, could be the reason. Okay? Because we are trying to apply the things that are appropriate for natural sciences to the educational field. Okay? For example, methodologies. For example, you would want the application of methodologies to social and psychological phenomena. Social scientists would quickly discover the laws of nature that govern society and the mind. That's the assumption always. Now, as much as possible, we have to conduct all the necessary methodologies that are based on the scientific method. But I tell you, let me ask you, can you conduct experiments on human beings? Diba? As a lawyer, I will tell you, there are a lot of ethical issues that you have to face. Let's say, for example, one of the proposal that was given to us, I sit down in one of the proposal, and there was a teacher who said, he was a dissertation presenter, candidate. He wanted to do an experiment. He will do his own style of teaching on this particular student, and on another class, he will perform the traditional method. So my first question is this: what is the traditional method? Okay, and then I cited the laws. No, so we have the Basic Education Act, and it tells us that all children should be given cooperative learning and inquiry-based approaches in our teaching process. So the question is, aren't you violating our statutes by doing that experiment, or by depriving these particular students with that particular approach? In the other classroom, you will do your video presentation, but in another classroom, you will only talk. So there are ethical implications there. Why would you deprive a set of learners of that particular opportunity to watch a very engaging video? Diba? So, technically, we cannot experiment with students. They are protected with a lot of laws and statutes. Okay? We cannot deprive them of this particular benefit. Okay? And our laws will tell us that we have to have inquiry-based learning minimally possible. Okay? So, the thing is, there are a lot of ethical issues when it comes to methodologies. Okay. So, what did the educational sector do? Of course, in the field of educational research, we do ex post facto design, which is after the fact na lang, and we gathered information based on our lack of ability to manipulate information, because we cannot experiment in the first place now with human beings. Okay? And there's a tendency for us to somehow will try to control human behavior and social reality, but honestly, that's very hard to do. Okay? So, the social scientists who followed the empiricist line, according to the authors, found little but disappointment. Okay? We cannot manipulate human beings like laboratory tools, no, that we can always just manipulate the variables, okay, out of its complexity. Okay? So, the nature of the educational research gives rise to rival interpretations. As you can see in our example a while ago, you are in the field of education. You are in the field of educational research. Okay? And oftentimes, there are many times that I have sit down in a lot of research presentation. There are many times that there are rival interpretations. The same topic, but different interpretations. Because the truth in the educational sector is that we are dealing with human beings. This is anchoring, no? We have to always anchor ourselves based on what field we are in. Becoming too stringent with the empirical results, being an empiricist sometimes creates a limitation for us in our interpretation. Okay? So we have to understand that the educational sector, the educational field, is an interaction between human beings. And a different approach that works in this particular experiment, in this particular research, might not be working in a different context, a different set of teacher, and this different set of learners. Okay? So, yung methodological talaga, that I have shared that to you. We are very much limited in terms of methodology. Okay? Right now, I will tell you, if you do experimental approach in studying educational research in your dissertation thesis, I tell you, you will find it difficult. You will be facing a lot of ethical issues. Okay? So, my suggestion really is try to look for ex post facto design, okay, or multivariate analysis. Okay? So, just use the information that is already available. Okay, the so-called complexity of education and social phenomena, we might attribute it to this. Okay, because as I've said, human beings are very hard to make sense of. They define themselves, they create their own, define their own culture. Like, for example, a different set of people might find this, you know, it is moral for them, but for another set of culture, it is immoral for them. Okay, so they define themselves. The preemption of education and social research by biology. There are many assumptions, and since we started with natural sciences and we have adopted most of their methodologies there in the natural sciences, we tend to assume that it will work similarly to the educational field. Okay? And as mentioned by the authors, they find themselves lost, no? Because it is something that up until now, for years, we haven't find a concrete answer of hard truths, knowledge that is not disproven, like force is equal to mass times acceleration, something like that, that we can use. Okay? So educational research is predominantly teleological rather than mechanistic. So if you say teleological, it pertains to the end result. We wanted our children to learn, our learners to learn. That is the end point. Okay? And just like there are many ways to accomplish one thing, there are also many ways to accomplish the learning process. And it is composed of multiple paths. It's not mechanistic in a way that it works in just in a one-way process. Okay? It is a very complicated sociological process. Okay. So the meanings that human beings ascribe to themselves and to their institutions are not subjective but intersubjective. So let alone one person, how he creates his own meanings is actually very complicated. But I tell you, the meanings that occur for each one is not just occurring in one person. It is something that is born out of our interaction with each other. Okay? We are governed by certain set of rules that are invisible to us. Okay? So whatever our meanings, like for example, in this particular university, we have different norms. No? And our meanings, our rules are shared. And sometimes these interactions, these rules govern our interaction. So they say man is an animal that defines itself. Okay? And man is truly the measure of all things. Not that we are the center of the universe, but only that we are the center of our universe. Okay? And how we interact, how we learn, is governed by our own set of rules. Okay? So, for example, just to illustrate this, how do you manifest a child's envy, for instance? Okay? So, envy is an emotion that you feel. But as a researcher, our next question is always this: how do we manifest envy in a concrete way so that I can measure and study it? But I tell you, envy might be a sin, for others. But I tell you, envy could also be a fuel for a child to do his best and not do anything negative about it, but only to fuel his desire in order for him to achieve a particular goal. But envy could also be used for other ways. Okay? So, as you can see here, child's envy, which is a very internal feeling, could be manifested in the social context in a different way. Okay? So, you might be envious against one person, but you can also say, okay, I feel envious, but I am also happy for that person, and I would want to do something about it in my own life. So how we react to it is very complicated. Okay? Envy could be a statement, an emotional outburst that happens inside the person, but it can be manifested in a different way. So educational research is very much, according to the authors, is much of the moral sciences. Because what might be the norm now might not be the norm in the future. So instead of, in relation to our topic, which is about interpretation, the authors would like to advance that we need to seek understanding rather than hard knowledge, prediction, and control. Because at the end of the day, if you will seek for hard knowledge, prediction, and control, you will only find it very hard to explain things. No, you will not be able to understand. So, as an educational researcher, which you are now, no, that will be our identity now. We have to not forget the essence of any research undertaking. We are here to make sense and to understand a particular phenomena. So wear that hat. You are there to interpret, you are there to understand things, you are there to make sense of it. Just like a very curious child who would look at the starfish and try to understand how that particular species work. This is also the essence of being an educational researcher. Our curiosity is rooted in our interest to understand better the social phenomena of learning. So we have to be fueled by that and not be limited by our desire to seek hard knowledge, try to control or try to predict something that is basically very hard to do in the educational research field. Okay, so basically, all of us are encouraged to seek understanding rather than hard knowledge, prediction, and control. Okay, because you are in the field of education. Okay, and basically, it is something that will, we are understanding human beings here. Okay, so I started with a story, so let me end with the story too. No, so there was once a guy, who was smoking in the airport. Okay, and here comes a person who saw this guy, and smoking. So he approached that person and said, you're smoking now, and you know how much that smoke costs, 'di ba, per day? So mahal-mahal naman, mahal na kasi yung smoke ngayon, yung cigarette ngayon. So of course, no. So he started computing it for him. So let's say, for example, because this guy is very particular with financial management, he said, so if you're going to save all the things that you smoke, how many cigarettes do you even smoke for one day? So they started computing it, etc. And of course, no, he started saying that if you would actually do that, save everything and stop smoking, you might be able to save enough money to buy a jet plane, no? So that is how much you can save if you just stop smoking now. Okay? So he did the computation and tried to see in a span of 10 years, you will be able to buy that jet plane. So hopefully you can consider it, diba? You'll be able to save as much money as possible by just stopping that vice of yours. Okay. So the person politely asks, "Do you smoke, sir?" So he said, "No, but I would like to ask you, do you own a jet plane?" So the person said, "I don't own a jet plane." And later on, the person went out and said, "Well, I already own that one. So that's where I'm going." So the thing is, when we teach a person, diba, when we do our own interpretation, basically, it's sometimes similar to this, diba? We don't know exactly what the particular context is. We just try to focus ourselves on hard facts. We say to ourselves, somehow it can actually help you save money. But I don't think that's the convincing point, diba? I think if he approached it using the concept of health, then I think that will be better. But he tried to convince that person by the concept of financial management. By saving his money, he can buy a jet plane. But that was a different approach. In the educational context, in the educational field, context is everything. No, when we teach our learners something, when we implement a particular approach, it's always dependent on the kind of learners and the kind of teachers that we have. So what might be true to another set of people will not be true on another set of people. And that is how complicated the educational field is. Not to discourage us, but to emphasize that when we try to interpret and understand, we need to be here with an open mind so that we'll be able to understand deeply the context of the social phenomena that we are in. Okay? So, let me end with some quote, no? So, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. Diba? So, that's according to Abraham Maslow. No? So, when we do our interpretation, we don't just use hammer all the time. Okay? We need to use different kinds of tools because not everything is a nail. Okay? So, when you do your interpretation, make sure that you understand completely what you are hammering. Diba? So that you can use the proper tool that in order to drive it to the point. So, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. So, that's according to William Bruce Cameron, because in our field that we are now, it's very important for us to know exactly what counts. No? So, when we do our interpretation, we have to have that open mind. We have to get to know our learners better, understand the context, because as I've said, no, the tools of the empiricists may not apply strictly to us because we are dealing with the most complex human beings that can define themselves differently from each other. So I think that concludes our sharing for today, and I hope you have learned something from our discussion. Thank you so much.